So good afternoon. I'm John Landrum. I'm one of the co-founders of this thing we're calling the neutralground.org. With me this afternoon is another co-founder, Kevin Ferguson. I know Kevin because he's a pretty recent past president of Young Leadership Council, and he was one of the great ones. He wasn't the Millard Fillmore of the Young Leadership Council. He was one of the Mount Rushmore presidents. And I have a lot of respect for Kevin and like spending time working with Kevin civically. Kevin, real quickly, besides your role as past president of YLC, you were with the Saints Pelican organization in your past, and now you're with New Orleans and Company as vice president for external affairs. Is that correct?
Yes, vice president for external affairs and membership.
Okay.
And so in that capacity, I oversee our community relations, our government affairs work, as well as our membership of 1,200 member businesses in the New Orleans area.
Thank you. And Kevin, when I first came to you about this particular project, you were a pretty quick jumper on her. You saw the problem and came in pretty quickly. What made that true? What was your driver?
Yeah, I think anybody that's been kind of living in this reality in the last 5 to 6 years understands kind of the point we're at, and that it's not a healthy point. It's something that I see reflected in some of the work that we do as a destination marketing organization. We've got both clients and we've got general visitors that are starting to align a little bit more based on their political preferences and beliefs, and I see how that impacts the way people view our city and our state. And then even for me personally, I think like many people, I found myself at a point where I was making a lot of judgments, both about people that I was familiar with, including friends and family. There were clients, especially in my previous role, folks that I considered friends and that I really respected, that I found starting to have some doubts about who they were as people,
Yep.
because we had different
Yeah.
agreements politically. And,
Yes.
For me, it was something very personal where that's not the type of person that I aspire to be. And by my nature, I'm kind of a connector and a people person. And so to experience that internally where you're not able to connect with people because of my political beliefs or their political views was something I didn't really like in myself. And so this spoke to me both personally and from a professional level. This is something where I really wanted to put my energy in.
Well, thanks for being that guy. And just to elaborate on some of that and unpack it a little bit. So yeah, from a business standpoint, you have conservatives who don't want to visit New Orleans because of its progressive leadership, and you have liberals who don't want to visit Louisiana because of its conservative leadership. And tourism is supposed to be about fun, right? It's not supposed to be about that. And so you're seeing that at a professional level.
Yeah, and I think, even more than just fun, it's an opportunity for people to see a different perspective, right? And to experience something different. That's part of the reason we travel. We want to get away from what we do every day and experience every day.
Yeah.
And the idea that you're kind of closed off from some people because the views or policies of our city, or
Right.
Conversely, that there's groups or people that don't want to come here because of the policies of the state. It's frustrating, it's disappointing, and it's really against the fundamental nature of why we travel and why people come together for meetings and conferences.
Right. The whole point of travel is to expose ourselves to people and places that are different from us.
Yeah.
And Kevin, it's funny because I think that point you're making about business and tourism is driven by that personal point, right? The point you made, and thanks for saying that, because I think you're not unique. I found myself in a similar boat, and I think most people who have been quick early signers are saying similar things, that we almost start to identify our beliefs as like part of ourselves, and therefore, wow, if somebody else thinks something else, then how could I be friendly with them? And the answer is easily, right? I mean,
Well, I think you think about it. If you got in a time machine and went back, I guess we'd have to go back 8 years, 7 years. I don't think we were at this point, right? And that there were people that we knew in our lives, people that we were friendly with, people that we had been associated with through work or personally, that we probably didn't have a strong sense of where they stood politically, right? And we found all these other things that we had in common and that we could connect on. And then there was like a switch got flipped, and all of a sudden, I think all of us, and I was guilty of this too, were very out front about the things that we believed in and stood for, and kind of drew lines in the sand. And it became a lot harder to find those commonalities at that point. So, in a way, we're trying to hit the time machine, right, and take
Right.
our society back to that point where we were before.
Well, maybe, and that's a good way to put it. I think a lot of things have been happening over the last 5, 10, maybe longer years where we can say, wait, there are some issues going on that various of us take very seriously. It's
Yep.
not to say that the things that we're, our policy commitments is not to say that we're unserious about those, but if we take them so seriously that we can't be effective talking to people who aren't in that camp, then that has a cost.
Yeah, I
I think
remember when I
that's
was
the
in high
recognition
school.
you're talking about. Am I right?
Yes, when I was in high school, I remember I had a brilliant teacher that said, reasonable people can fundamentally disagree on issues all the time. Like that is a natural state of things, right? There's
Yeah.
the ability to disagree with somebody, but still act civilly, still manage, still cooperate, still work together. And we started to drift away from that a little bit. That's why I think I was so drawn to what we're trying to do here with the neutral ground, was how do we get back to a point to where we accept that we're all reasonable people, right? That no one is aligned on the side of darkness or evil. And that we can have disagreements, and the focus on having those disagreements from a point of truth was fundamentally important. And that's something that I'm really proud that the neutral ground really promotes.
Kevin, what would you like to see happen if we succeed in this movement? I mean, there are levels of success, right? But what are you hoping happens over time?
My biggest hope is that we get back to a point where you can engage people in conversation, where people are open-minded about who they meet and don't make assumptions based on what a person looks like or who they support politically, and that we get back to a point where we have substantive conversations around policy and politics that don't involve the othering, that don't involve really detracting from somebody's character or believing that they have to be an awful person because of who they support. That's the ultimate hope for this, that there'll be peace at the dinner table during Thanksgiving, and that we can all go back to arguing about football and baseball and other things, and less devolving into to these serious disagreements and what I felt was borderline hatred, which was starting to pop up around politics. So that's the ultimate goal.
Kevin, when you put it that well, you get the last word. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John.